So this is a fairly serious video about my story about ankylosing spondylitis. Not like the other funnier videos that I've put up on YouTube so far, which have been very few and far between. So I thought I would just explain to you how it came about. So as a child, growing up in Melbourne, Australia, working class Catholic family, I never really, it didn't really sort of strike me that there was anything wrong with me. I was a little bit unflexible. I didn't like sport much. I didn't really have any aches or pains or anything like that. There was nothing that triggered it. But I left school at 15 and I became a toolmaker. And in those particular days in the 1970s, being a toolmaker was a very dangerous job. And I remember when I was working on drilling concrete with a hammer drill, and with that you have to blow the dust out of the concrete with a air gun. And at that time the concrete dust went into my eye and I got this severe injury. Went to the first aid room, and at that particular time they pretty much just got an egg cup full of water and put it over my eye and washed it out. It didn't really ever get better. It just got redder and redder and redder over after the next 2 or 3 weeks. So I had it investigated, and fair enough, it seemed to be after diagnosing Iritis, or uveitis as it may be called, which is an inflammation, almost like an arthritis of the eye. And I was stuck in the Melbourne Eye Hospital for 4 weeks while they injected huge amounts of cortisone into my eye. It did eventually heal up, but I would then continue to get iritis at least 2 or 3 times every year. At about 18 years of age, I hurt my sacroiliac joints being in the back of a car. It went over a big bump. I was sitting in a 4-wheel drive. At the back, they had a sort of a metal shelf, and that metal shelf smacked in straight into my lower back. And I was in pain ever since that. It never recovered. It was like having sciatica down both of your legs at the same time. Had an x-ray, nothing really was found. Bit of inflammation, nothing more. Then about a year later, after the pain was consistently always there, I went to a doctor, my local general practitioner who had been our family doctor for years and years, and I said, I am in pain. He said, where are you in pain? And I said, I am in pain everywhere. And he looked at me very seriously and he says, well, we need to get you assessed by a specialist. It could be 1 or 2 things. It could be rheumatoid arthritis, or it could be ankylosing spondylitis. I'm thinking the latter. So a week later I was off to a Collins Street specialist. In Melbourne, Collins Street is like Harley Street in London, where they have the best specialists. And I went up to the 11th floor and I saw this very upper class doctor. He was sitting in his room, smoking a cigarette, drinking coffee. Come in here, my dear boy, take a sit over there. And he came and assessed me. Bend over. Right, thank you. Then he laid me down on the couch, checked on my chest, listened very carefully, looking at me very seriously, and he goes, right, we'll send you down to the vampires on the 9th floor where they'll take some blood, we'll get a blood test from you, and we'll see you in a week's time. A week goes past, come back. Well, my dear boy, you have ankylosing spondylitis. This is what you need to do. Each day, underneath the shower if you like, breathe in deeply and keep your chest expanded, and then release, and then for 30 minutes every day lie completely flat on the floor just to keep your spine straight, so when it does set, it will set straight, because by the time you're 40 we want you walking down the street being able to see the horizon. I went, okay, so I didn't know whether this was a good thing or a bad thing or what it was, but he didn't let me sort of really tell me how serious it actually was. Life continued. I was in terrible pain. The only medication at that particular time were just anti-inflammatories, and the anti-inflammatories were making me sick in my stomach as well. So time went past and I got sicker and I was in pain and I was terribly thin and I didn't really look after myself. I used to smoke a lot of ganja in those days. It didn't really sort of, people say that it's a painkiller. Well, it didn't seem to sort of make any difference. But I was a very thin, pale person. I tried to go on sickness benefits, but was refused by what they called in those days the Commonwealth Medical Officer, because he believed with my condition you have to stay active and it's the best thing for you. And he was right. He was right. And I did. I stayed active. In fact, I was never unemployed. I kept on working through the pain. And if you have ankylosing spondylitis, I would advise you keep on going. Just keep moving. You have to keep moving. If you stay inactive, you will just go to the pack. You have to keep going. So important. Anyhow, so life continued, and I got married at 24 to, I would describe, a quite a dominating lady, but she was caring in the fact that she helped me with my exercises, especially when I laid on the floor every day and I was in so much pain, and she would help me up. In fact, she made a board that when I laid on the board, instead of having to lift me up because it was so hard for me to get back up, she would lift the board up and I would go with it and scream my head off at the same time. Anyhow, that relationship petered out because, well, if you can imagine the difficulties of looking after a person with such a condition, and I mean, people will only have so much patience. There are people who are a lot more caring. Anyhow, after that, which was, I think, 1992, and I then had some other relationships at the same time. They were all good, had some great relationships, and then I got married to my second wife. Now, just before I got married to my second wife, I went to another rheumatologist who, in a blasé way, just said, your hips are totally worn out, they have to be replaced, which absolutely floored me because I couldn't walk And I had asked my GP before, please, is there anything wrong with my hips? And no, you don't have dysplasia or whatever it was called. I said, okay, fine. So we continued on, but then I did have an x-ray and it showed that the hips were completely destroyed. So I went and saw another really good specialist and orthopedic surgeon who said, look, we're going to replace both your hips at the same time, just so that we can straighten you up more. When he did do that, I got paralyzed in the left leg through the nerves being stretched, but miraculously it recovered and I was able to use the quadriceps in my left leg okay. It was through hydrotherapy that I noticed that my leg was starting to kick again. So my hips were replaced and it was like a brand new lease of life. I could walk really well. I could do most things except run. After my hips were replaced, my symptoms of ankylosing spondylitis seemed to recede. At the same time, while I had all of this pain, I had another symptom of ankylosing spondylitis, which is called ulcerative colitis, which is nasty. And up until that point, it was being consistent all the time. But after the hips were replaced, all symptoms vanished. In fact, all the symptoms started to go, including the pain of my ankylosing spondylitis after my hips were replaced. Now, I don't know whether this has got to do with all the blood they had to pump into me, since apparently I'd lost so much blood on the operating table. They had to pump me full of fresh blood. But all symptoms stopped and the disease pretty much burnt out. But it's left me with the complete rigidity from my neck to my ass. And so I'm a walking statue. I don't move very well, but I'm fairly... I suppose I'm upright to a degree, but my neck is forward. I've continued to sort of go on okay. So the disease completely burnt out and it didn't leave me with any pain anymore, but I was left with mechanical issues of the condition where everything had set. My whole spine was the classic bamboo spine. So in those particular types of conditions, you have to be careful about what you do with your body in relation to the way you walk. You need to take care, because if you fall, you will break. And that did happen to me. The first time, somebody went through a stop sign, hit me side on in my car, and my spine snapped. And it snapped at the lower end of my back near the sacroiliac joints. It was a very unusual break, and the orthopedic surgeon didn't actually notice it until 2 weeks later. And it was after that, when they did discover it, they had to put me in a cast, and my spine just fused up again like ankylosing spondylitis does. And I was okay, but the accident had left me slightly bent forward a little bit. So I wasn't as straight as what I was before. Then another accident 5 years ago, I was riding my bicycle, and I don't know whether I just blacked out or what happened. I can't even remember. I was on the tram tracks in the middle of a road, and the next thing I noticed is I'm surrounded by a circle of people. One person said, "You've had an accident, you're in the middle of the road in Melbourne, the ambulance is on its way." I noticed and looked around and I saw there was a lot of blood, which was mine. Then I passed out again. I was in the Alfred Hospital in Melbourne, which is the main hospital in Melbourne, Australia. And they instantly recognised I had ankylosing spondylitis because they did a complete scan. I had broken my neck, I had a head injury and slight brain trauma, and I had cracked my skull here, and I had smashed my arm to pieces. Okay, so it's the third day now after trying to film this video, and all I can say is thanks Canon. Reliable, stopping every 15 minutes on 4K. Yeah, well, I think I'll just use this for my car. Anyhow, what I was talking about having an accident, and if you fall, that you will break with this condition. And that was the result of falling off an electric bicycle in Wallasey Road in Melbourne, and it was pretty bad. I ended up in the Alfred Hospital in Melbourne, if you have not already heard this, and surrounded by doctors monitoring me after they had scanned me, saw that I had a bamboo spine, which is what they would call in medical terms somebody with ankylosing spondylitis, which is all the vertebrae being joined together. And I was stuck there for 8 days, and I was in a neck brace because I broke my neck. Luckily, nothing in relation to my spinal cord was severed, so I dodged that bullet. I had some damage to the artery that goes to the brain, which I had to take aspirin for 6 months, so it wouldn't clot and give me a stroke. And I had to wear that hard neck brace for 3 months, and that was probably one of the worst things I have ever had to do in relation to having ankylosing spondylitis and the results of any injuries. It was awful. But we got through it, and I couldn't sleep for 3 weeks, but we got through it in the end, and everything healed up miraculously. Like, I had this just uncanny ability to have these things happen to me and then survive and recover and keep on going. After that head injury, I was markedly a completely different person. My brain had some brain trauma, and with that came a personality change. I had to go on antidepressants shortly afterwards, and so I was on antidepressants, Zoloft, for about four years or something like that. Only until the last month I've gone off them, and I feel like a completely different person. But it was very similar, I believe, when Michael Hutchence, the lead singer of In Excess, had his motorbike accident. He also had head trauma, and some things I have been told, don't quote me on this, may have affected the way he was thinking at that particular time, as some band members had come out and talked about, but that's just my opinion. But it did have a markedly changed effect on the way I thought, and I wasn't quite the same person, and ended up being on antidepressants, as I said, and I felt like being on Zoloft is supposed to stimulate you, get you going, motivate you. It did completely the opposite to me. It made me sedated. It made me not particularly motivated at all. In fact, I would lie on the couch most of the weekend at that time, and couldn't get myself off it. But my marriage ended shortly afterwards, and so I had to get myself together very, very quickly. I had good friends around me who assisted me, and I was able to move on with my life. And now that I'm off antidepressants, and I don't, in my opinion, antidepressants may have helped me through a particular period, but in the long run, I don't feel that they have assisted me late in the last, say, year or so, or 2 years. I felt that I was actually more anxious, more depressed while I was on them, and now that I'm off them, I feel totally motivated, totally more energetic, wanting to get up in the morning and do things, get things done by the end of the day, and made sure that I've accomplished something, especially now that I'm retired and I have many, many projects I want to do. But getting back to ankylosing spondylitis and activity, so I was riding bikes, I was riding into work every day. If anybody out there who has ankylosing spondylitis and is riding bicycles, be careful. Just be careful. If you're going to come off a bike with a condition like we've got, it's not going to be good. So I haven't given up on the idea of doing things like that. I go to the gym now every day. I go on an assault bicycle. I lift weights, and I do want an electric scooter. I want to have some fun. I want to go out there with my camera. You know, I'm going to be riding very, very, very slowly. But it's a risk, I know, but it's a risk that outweighs the fun, and you've got to have fun. You've just got to have it. So, okay, let's just summarize. So, with ankylosing spondylitis, if you are a sufferer, you're in pain, do as much as you physically can to alleviate the pain. Yes, you're going to probably need medicines. You'll need the immune suppressants, which is what is being used now. But keep active. Don't give up. Keep going on. And just get on with it. Just get on with it. Bloody well, get on with it. Every day, get out of bed and do something. Get something done. You'll get through it. Make sure you're looking at the horizon by the time you're 50. Keep your head up and keep strong. Thanks.